If there was ever an award given for unoriginality, this thing would get it. All right, everybody, today we're going all the way back to 1980 to look at a motion picture that, if this didn't get sued for copyright infringement, I don't know what possibly ever could. We are talking about He Knows You're Alone. Ooh, whatever. But before we get going any further, before we dig into this thing anymore, once and again, and as always, to the trailer.
On the night before her wedding, every girl is alone. Joyce, Nancy, Amy, Tricia, Joan, Debbie. On the night before her wedding, every girl is frightened. And this time, there's good reason. He knows you're alone.
I know who the next girl is. Never mind how. I just know who it is.
On the night before the wedding, he knows you're alone, and it's going to be for the very last time.
Okay, this motion picture was directed by Armand Mastroianni. I think I said that right. Does it really matter? Probably not. Let's run the list. He directed things like Distortions and The Clairvoyant, but really mostly TV stuff. War of the Worlds, the series, Friday the 13th, the series, Reasonable Doubt, Invasion, Touched by an Angel, The Dead Zone, Pandemic, whatever. I mean, he's not going to jump out at you. You're not going to remember the name. You're not going to really give a shit. It is what it is. And he directed this. Right. Okay, everybody, we're going to go through this kind of quick. You know what I'm saying? This is one of those motion pictures I'm going to waste a whole lot of time on because, well, we'll get to all of that. Anyway, but let's get going with the cast and do what we're going to do. Playing Marvin, Don Scardino. Let's go through this. He was in Squirm. He was in The People Next Door and Cruising and on TV, Guiding Light, Another World, 30 Rock, and he went on to be a director of, TV shows, Two Broke Girls, Law and Order, 30 Rock itself. So he had a decent little career, did what he did, was what it was. Let's keep moving. Playing Amy, Caitlin O'Heaney. Yeah, mostly TV work. Let's go. She was on stuff like St. Elsewhere and Tales of the Gold Monkey and Apple Pie and The Charmings and Alien Nation, Matlock, Law and Order, Silver Spoons, Murder, She Wrote, Beauty and the Beast. That kind of stuff. You might remember her name. You might remember her face probably more. But she was out and about. Here's what it was. Playing Nancy, Elizabeth Kemp. Again, TV work. Let's run the numbers. We're talking about she was on Law and Order, and LA Law, and Cop Shop, and Another World, and Love of Life, and Challenger, and Family of Spies, or whatever the hell it was. So she was out there and about. She probably deserves extra props in this movie because, there's always one girl that has to do the topless scene, and, well, she got picked. Whatever. She was there. She was in this. Let's just keep going. Playing Detective Gamble, Louis Arlt. It doesn't make a difference. You don't give a shit. Anyway, he was on TV in Ryan's Hope. He was on stuff like Search for Tomorrow and As the World Turns and Law and Order, Tales from the Dark Side. Odds-on favorite, you're not going to remember this guy from anything, so let's just get going. Now, the funny thing about this motion picture, though, is there was 3 people who went on to have fairly sizable careers in this thing. Honestly. So let's run through. We're talking Tom Hanks was in this thing. Yeah, he was young. It was his first thing. We're talking about Philadelphia. We're talking about Saving Private Ryan and Bachelor Party and Forrest Gump. And Paul Gleason was in this thing. Breakfast Club, Die Hard, Trading Places, and James Rebhorn, Silkwood, Independence Day, My Cousin Vinny, Scent of a Woman. So, you're going to see names that became big in this when they weren't big, and that's why they're there. Okay, everybody, we're going to do this in 90 seconds or less, so we keep it short, keep it fast, keep it entertaining, keep it moving, and really this motion picture doesn't deserve more than a minute and a half of my time, so let's just roll in. The movie starts out, you see this young couple, they're in a car, they're making out, and they're about to be murdered, and oh my god, but you find out it's just a movie being played in the theater, and there's a couple girls watching it. The one girl can't handle it, the other girl thinks it's great. The one girl goes to the bathroom, there's a weird guy watching her. She says, ooh, this shit's odd. She goes back to sit in her seat. Before you know it, she gets stabbed right to the back of the chair, she dies, whatever. Her friend freaks out, the movie theater goes, ah! Before you know it, they call in the cops. As they're talking, Detective Gamble is told, oh my god, she was killed, and she was about to be married next week. He goes, what? What? He's back! He's back! Who's back? Well, you'll find out in a second. It is what it is. Next thing you know, there's this guy. Ray is his name. Doesn't really make a difference. And he is taking the bus. And Ray has a flashback to a moment where you find out that a girl that he was in love with and was supposed to be with, or whatever the hell happened, left him and was about to marry another guy. So he shows up at the wedding. He murders her. And then he takes off across the country, killing a whole bunch more women. It is what it is. Nobody ever caught him. Nobody ever tracked him down, because apparently if you just take public transportation, you're fucking immune. Whatever. Let's get rolling. Anyway, he gets off the bus just in time to find young Amy and her soon-to-be husband Phil, who's a complete jerk-off and cheats on her and whatever, but that's another story for another day. They are about to be married. But when he gets off the bus, he finds out that she's a new bride-to-be, because people are singing the new bride-to-be song to her, and he goes, aha, I must stalk her until I kill her and do what I must do. So, anyway, she goes off, goes to a dance class with her friends, is hanging out. One of her friends is banging one of the professors. Is what it is. She's going to have a bachelorette party. Is what it was. She goes and tries on her dress. She bumps into her old boyfriend, Marvin. You find out that he's a really sweet guy, and he really loves her, but because he went away for the summer, she left him for another dude, and is now getting married, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares. Anyway, from that point, she's followed. She's followed by Ray, and Ray kills the guy who runs the dress shop. Why? Who the fuck knows? He ain't getting married. Doesn't make a difference, but kills him anyway. Movie marches on. She finds out that her friend really likes a jogger. The jogger guy kind of hooks up with the friend, becomes part of the group. As they're running around, going to places like, amusement parks and shit, she sees Ray watching her from a distance, because he is. He's following her around, because that's what he does. Next thing you know, the Ray breaks into the house and kills her friend, and she's running around. While Detective fucking what's-his-name is sitting there saying, oh my god, this is the guy. I gotta find him, I gotta hunt him down. He's the only person, I'm the only person that can kill him. Because you find out that the bride that got killed in the beginning of the movie during the flashback was actually marrying that detective, and he's been hunting this guy down, again, all over the place, state across state. Can't catch the guy because he takes public transportation, and that keeps you out of the public eye with the police. Fucking whatever. Then you wind up finding out that this dude is going to take and chase them to the morgue where Marvin works, and whatever. I honestly, fucking whatever. It is what it is. I'll even give you the ending in the summation. It just doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. Okay, everybody, what's the story with He Knows You're Alone? Why am I being so hard on it? Well, let's be honest. Of all the motion pictures out there that ripped off Halloween, and there were many, some admittedly so, the makers of Friday the 13th blatantly said, we just copied Halloween. But they put enough of their own vibe and spin on it, so you're like, hey, I enjoyed Friday the 13th. Hey, I got kind of a kick out of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Hey, I had some fun with whatever it was at the time. My Bloody Valentine, or whatever the fuck movie might have been. And then there's this. This movie went way, way past the point. I mean, they didn't just rip off Halloween. They remade Halloween. Yeah, I know, the night he came home, and Ray's basically coming home to wreak havoc again about this murder and all that, and he's back in town. Ugh. But the way that they made this motion picture is the problem. First off, the soundtrack to this motion picture is the Halloween soundtrack with like 3 notes changed. Instead of it becomes whatever the hell it becomes. It's the same thing. It's the same piano rhythm. It's the same everything. They stole the music for all intents and purposes. And then, as though that wasn't hackneyed enough, they decided, well, we're going to shoot this movie shot for shot, with shot for shot that came out of Halloween. There's the over-the-shoulder look of the killer. Why they're even bothering, we don't know, because we've seen the fucking guy. We know his name. We know who he is. We know what he looks like. We know everything about this asshole, but we have to somehow still do the over-the-shoulder shots. Unless he's killing somebody, then we do the close-up on his face, but that's fine. You got to do the over-the-shoulder like you don't really know who he is. Then they do the he's standing in the backyard shot, watching the girl in her house. And then they do the she's in the room and he suddenly rises up behind her shot. This movie is shot for shot a ripoff of Halloween. It's ridiculous how much they ripped it off. You know what? Am I gonna do the big three? Okay, I'll do the big three like I always do. Okay, the directing, it's okay. All right, it's all right. It's not great. It's not bad. But it is what it is. It reminds you of something like, Black Christmas or something like that. Directing, not the cinematography. It doesn't have the beautiful lighting and all that movie did. But it's whatever. It's fair enough. The writing, the dialogue is what it is. It is what it is. It's not great. It's not bad. It is what it is. If you're looking for writing from a story point of view, just jump out a goddamn window because you're not going to get that. But if you're looking for simple back and forth talk, yes, this motion picture has that. And the acting, well, okay. I'm going to go far and say this. The Don character and the Caitlin, well, not Don character, Don and Caitlin, the actors, they play their roles fairly likable. And you can fairly feel bad for them, kind of, sort of. You know what I mean? They're kind of like likable. They're kind of like, okay, these are the people we're supposed to root for, and they pull that off. And actually, the acting in this thing is probably the only semi-saving grace in it, because most of the actors do a fairly decent job. I mean, Detective Gamble is just corny and ridiculous, but everybody else is at least trying, and they're playing their roles semi-effectively. But no matter what they do, they cannot get past the ridiculousness of the plot. To be honest, I mean, it just is what it is, and the complete lack of originality, or basically the lack of effort to try to say, hey, okay, we're going to remake Halloween like every other fucking person did back then, but we're going to throw a spin on it so that it's just not blatant and in your face. We're going to try to do a thing that's semi-unique amongst itself and has its own spirit and vibe and directorial vision. This motion picture has none of that. I mean, they just sat down and they said, how did John shoot it? Come on, what did Carpenter do? And they copied it. How did John score it? What did Carpenter do? And they scored it. And then they said, well, give us a story about a guy who kills somebody, leaves, and then comes back years later and starts killing everybody again because he just becomes obsessed with the first girl he sees. Oh yeah, that's what John did. Well, we'll do that. And that's what this motion picture is. Front to back, top to bottom. Was it successful for its time? Yeah, they made it for a couple 100,000. It made like $5 million. So I guess it was successful. And we all look back at it and say, oh yeah, I remember that fucking movie. It was what it was. If Halloween didn't exist, and Halloween was never made, or you never saw Halloween, then you might look at this and say, okay, it's not great, but I'm reasonably entertained for the night. Kind of. But being that you've all seen Halloween, and being that you've now watched this afterwards, it's almost insulting how unoriginal it is. I know I'm being hard on it. I know there's probably people out there that have fond memories of this fucking thing, and might have watched it when they were a kid on late night TV and been like, oh my God, this is kind of scary. And I get it. There's all movies out there that we've seen that were somewhat unoriginal. But nobody took it to home like these guys. I mean, nobody. They didn't even try to disguise it. So, it is what it is. And by the way, that whole hackneyed ending, you know, where Caitlin O'Healy, Amy, where fuck her name is, comes, and she's like, oh my God, I finally made the right choice. I'm with the guy that really loves me now. And then the circle starts all over again because her ex-fiance shows up. Whatever. You know what I mean? Whatever. Whatever. Anyway, everybody, if you're bored out of your gourd one night and you just want to see a motion picture where they blatantly, laughably rip off Halloween at every turn, corner, and angle, and just forget things like suspense and terror and originality and pure mystery or any of that kind of shit, they just wipe all that out and they just say, we're going to copy this movie shot for shot, note for note, and re-represent it to you, then this is a masterpiece. But you're not going to be able to do that kind of shit. And you're going to look at this thing for what it is and realize what it was. And it's going to be like a, why are we here? Why are we doing this? Can't we just go watch something else? All right, everybody, be good. Take care. Stay out of trouble. Sorry I had to beat the shit out of this movie so bad. I guess I'm just in one of those moods, and it's one of those movies that just, wow. Take care. Stay out of trouble. I can't remember where I left off. I'm just rolling too far. And remember, never, ever, ever take any bullshit from anybody. See you soon.